Hey there, my name is Jim. I run CGC Sports Illustrated, and we did this collectors roundtable a couple of months ago and got a ton of great feedback on it. So I think this is something we're going to do probably on a regular basis. So welcome to Collectors Roundtable, episode number 2. We've got a number of things regarding the graded magazine hobby that we're going to talk about today. And I want to start, though, by just going around. There's only 5 of us in here, so I want to go around to everybody. Just introduce yourself really quickly. And if you have a magazine, either raw or graded, to show off and talk about, that'd be great. Bradley, why don't you get us started off?
Yeah, my name's Bradley. Also go by, I guess now, sports magazine collector. Trying to follow in Jim's footsteps. Just started a YouTube channel and Twitter, Instagram account. So check out Sports Magazine
So wait a minute. Let's give you some promotion on that. What is it? How can they find you? They can find you on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. And what's the handle?
Yep, it's just search Sports Magazine Collector, and I'm putting out 1 video a week. About graded Sports Illustrated. It's basically trying to promote the hobby and spread awareness a little bit. So
awesome, love it. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Here's one I'll share. It is not graded, but it is going in to be graded. So I'm a huge Cardinals fan. Sorry, there's a little bit of a glare there, but this is Yadier Molina. This is his only cover from 2014. It says Rare Bird on there, and it was a variant as well. There were 4 that week. So once again, as a Cardinals fan, I'm really pumped to get that one graded.
You know what? I don't think I've ever seen that issue before. So that's an awesome, which isn't a surprise because it sounds like it's a 1 of 4 variant. That's a good one. Excellent. Greg, why don't you go next?
All right. Greg Thorpe. I'm from Florida. I live in Florida. Kind of was more into autograph stuff, like that magazine you just showed. I have an autographed copy of that. Just starting to get into the grading of magazines. Kind of most of the ones I had autographed copies that the only reason I sent them in was more to get encapsulated. I have like the Mantle, with the old one with his face, Hank Aaron, stuff like that. But I was more worried about protecting them more than the grading. So I just mailed them in. It's been a year or 2 ago. Kind of wish I hadn't have done it, but you kind of live and learn. The one I want to show right now is Aaron Judge, probably the hottest player in baseball. It's a 9.8.
Nice.
Dude, that's fantastic. So it's so funny. So you could have picked that up on eBay. I saw one last year, maybe 18 months ago for $500, and I obviously kicking myself that I didn't do it. But man, the guy was hurt and he was in a slump, and now
nobody was talking about him.
He's the hottest thing in the world. That's awesome that you've got that at 9.8. Bravo.
Now that you mentioned, I can go back on eBay and look at my purchases. That is where I got it. It might have been the same one you saw on there.
That's awesome.
I'll go back and look, but I don't even know. I don't do the pop report. I don't read and study that. I don't know if there's any other 9.8s out there.
There are. It's been a while since I've checked, so it's probably more than that. But I think last time I looked, and it's been a while, there were probably only about 5 or 6, which for a modern issue. Because what year did that come out? I think that was 2017. If you can see it on there. Anyway, it's a really recent
2017.
issue. Yeah, 17. So 5 for a major superstar from the Yankees. That's not many at all. That's awesome. Love it, Greg. Let's go to Craig.
Hey, I'm Craig. I live in Brandon, Manitoba, Canada. And issue I'm going to show here is probably one of my Grail issues. It's just the Griffey Jr. First cover, 9.4. The hunt's always on for a 9.8 candidate, but for some reason, I think the highest, this is still a 9.6, I think is still the highest.
Yeah, and I think it just showed up for the longest time. 9.4 was the highest graded. And I think it was just in the last 6 months or so that somebody popped a 9.6.
Yeah, I feel like when I got the 9.4 back and I checked right after that, that's when the 2 9.6s popped in. But yeah, that's a Grail issue for me.
It's awesome. Love it. Rick, let's go to you.
Yeah, Rick from New Hampshire. And I'm a little bit probably different than most. I'm a real huge vintage collector. And this one is going to be going in shortly. It's the first issue of Sports Album from 1948 with Joe DiMaggio on the cover. It's in pretty good shape.
That's
and
awesome.
I'm still waiting. I've got over 300 issues at CGC that are going to be one of ones of everything. So a lot of good stuff coming.
That's awesome. I love, 99% of what I've got is Sports Illustrated, but I love some of those one-offs of those other publications from back then. And that's a great looking shot. I mean, DiMaggio, do me a favor, Rick, show that again and talk so the camera goes on you.
Yes, that's it. And that's the first issue of it. It's 1948.
And that's just a great looking shot of him swinging, and you can see the Yankees logo there and the pinstripe. That's very cool.
Thanks.
Very cool. I'm actually going to follow that up because I've got something that's similar. I've gotten into a lot of game programs recently. So this is the 1942 World Series game program. I bought a collection of about 20 World Series programs. Maybe most of them are from the 50s and 60s, but this one from 1942. And obviously, we were less than a year into World War II at that point. And so you can see here that it's all about war bonds, and you've got, the woman in uniform there, and I love it. And it was the Yankees and Cardinals, Bradley.
Right. Cardinals won it.
42, and absolutely love that. Okay. Thanks for the intro and the roundtable for everybody. And now that we got that going, let's go to topic number 1. And guys, just kind of jump in. But we've got this massive heritage auction that is happening right now. I'm sure you're all aware of it. This is the first time that we have had a large collection of ultra premium graded Sports Illustrateds all up for auction at the same time. Heritage has usually got, every auction, they've got 1 or 2, or maybe as many as 5 or 6 or 10. Sometimes there's a great one like the 9.4 Gretzky or the 9.8 amazing Tom Brady that have been there in the last 6 months or so, but never have we had 6 slabs that are this ultra premium. Who wants to jump in and kind of talk about that and give us their thoughts and opinions on where they think things are going to go there?
Hey, Jim, can I just introduce myself real quick?
Oh, Dan, hey, I'm sorry, you're joined a minute late. Yes, please do.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Hey, Craig. Nice to
Hey,
put a
how's it
face
going?
to the name. How you doing?
Yeah. Good.
Good. So I'm Dan Pingree. We live in Michigan, so I'll apologize in advance if you hear a horn. My daughter is practicing the French horn downstairs, so unfortunately, yeah, bad timing. But anyway, so sorry about that. The one I wanted to share, Jim, can I share my screen real quick?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see what it looks like. Oh,
Yeah.
Right. You've got a lot of yours cataloged digitally.
Yeah. So if you can just give me sharing privileges, I'll just show you an image. It's one I really like. It says you've disabled participant screen sharing.
Well,
So you
let me
gotta go-
work. I tell you what, Dan, give me your thoughts on the heritage auction real quick, and I'll work on how to assign you screen sharing here.
Yeah, you just go down to click share screen, and you select allow multiple people to share.
There we
how
go.
you do it.
You should be able to rock and roll now.
Yep. Okay. So this is the one I wanted to share. So can you guys see it?
Yeah, I got four small images of some slabs there.
Okay, but you can't see. Okay. Let's try this again. Here we go. Okay. We see this?
Oh yeah, the Bobby Orr.
Right. So Craig can appreciate this as a Canadian.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I like this, hockey isn't my favorite sport. I like it, but I'm more of a basketball fan than hockey. But I think this cover to me illustrates what's so cool about magazines, or one of the things that's so cool, and that is just the vivid imagery of the photography. So, you've got, it looks like Bobby has a broken nose. He's certainly been roughed up. No helmet. And then you've got this kind of creepy goalkeeper in the background lurking. And, it's pretty close up. And the caption, "Hockey's wildest season." So if you're a Bobby Orr fan or hockey fan, I mean, this to me just kind of gets you right in the moment and gets you into the thick of the action of the sporting event. And I think that that a lot of Sports Illustrated covers do that really, really well. And it's one of the attractive things visually to me about magazines. So this is the one that I thought I would share. I really like it. I think it's still a pop one.
It is.
Jim,
Yeah, it's still the
honest.
highest graded. Yep.
It's kind of a tough one. It's pretty condition sensitive, but pretty cool magazine to me anyway.
And I love the old school hockey goalie mask, the Friday the 13th style goalie mask there. That's a great issue, Dan, and one of many amazing issues in your collection, I know.
No, I mean, I'll share just one more. If you'll
Yeah, please.
indulge me.
Believe me, I can sit here and look at all your collection all day.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Gee.
This one I really like too, because again, even though on one hand, this is a few years after Nolan Ryan's rookie in 1968, when you compare this to his 68 Topps rookie card, which is, he shares with Jerry Kuzman, I mean, this looks like you're about to get hit with a fastball right in the face. And so again, it puts you in the action, just a phenomenal image. And, great Nolan Ryan, and just the intensity in this photo, really, really cool to me. So this is definitely one of my favorite ones.
And that's a great one. And for collectors out there, be careful when you're looking at this, because Nolan Ryan's second cover, I believe, is in 1979, and it looks almost exactly the same. I mean, it's literally
right?
like the same kind of frame, he's the same size, he's in the same throwing motion. It's very, very similar. So if you're out there looking for it, yeah, his second issue is extremely similar. So if you're just looking at the image, make sure, and you're dead set on having his first cover, make sure you're looking for the 75, because that's.
Make sure you look at this date up here.
Yep, for sure.
So
Awesome. Love those, Dan.
Those are two of my favorites. And as far as my take on Heritage, so in full disclosure, some of those consignments are mine. I hope they do well. I hope you guys hopefully people in this group win some of them. So the Mantle and the Ollie are mine, as are the Lemieux and the Trout. And so I really got into this about 5 years ago. Introduced by a friend, and I've really enjoyed it. And I felt like now was the right time to kind of put some good stuff out there and see if we can't really establish some market pricing. And I think I know enough guys that are interested in high grade stuff that I hope they do well, but we'll see. So I'd love to kind of hear what your guys' thoughts are and where they end up now that we've got a week and a half under our belt since the auction started.
Yeah, and I've got a ton of opinions, so I'd love to hear somebody else from the group kind of jump in and give me their thoughts on things, and then I'll kind of hold mine to the end.
Well, how's the pricing going so far in the first week?
Yeah, so the Mantle and the Ollie are about 12,000. The bid, I think the Lemieux is around 3 or 4. The Trout was around, and Dan, you probably know better than I do.
The Trout's at like it's I think the Hammer right now is at like 52.50. So what's that, about 63, 62, 63 all in? Last I checked.
I think the Kobe's at about 5 or 6 grand, and I think the LeBron is at about 6 or 7. So that's where we stand right now on the pricing.
The Lemieux, which is a really tough one. I mean, Pop won a 5 in a 9.8, as great as Gretzky. That's a tough one. That one I think is just over 3.
Wow.
So that's where they're at with 3 weeks to go.
Yeah, it's the 24th, I believe, is the end date on all of those.
Well, my thought is, I think that some of these magazines are going to have to do well, and I think other collectors are going to have to look at this as, that this is a good investment, just like they think cards are a good investment. They have been for years, up and down. But I think that it's going to take more than just SI guys like ourselves to buy in that, hey, this is a good place to invest your money and have some fun with it. Be able to see these covers appreciate over time.
there's just so few comps on everything. That's the hard thing when you start to look in the hobby. It's easy to look up comps on the pricing of cards, so you know what they're worth. But this is in its infancy, so I congratulate you for selling some of those, because we really start to need to have some people can't collect and hold on to all this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Rick,
gotta keep moving
Rick,
it on.
if you think there's a shortage of data points now, I mean, you should have seen it 5 years ago.
Oh,
You
sure.
just had,
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, I have no idea what I mean,
Right.
the stuff that some of the stuff I still have, I mean, I thought I completely overpaid for, because you just don't have anything to compare it to.
Exactly.
We were trying to kind of compare it with cards.
Right.
And of course, these are, even with the run up in some of the pricing, these are so much cheaper than cards, especially man.
Oh, yeah.
It's not even
And so much
close.
scarcer.
Right.
There's so much more condition sensitive and scarce. So, I mean, I think it was good for collectible to buy that Gretzky. And I'm actually, so Ezra reached out and asked if he could interview me about magazines on Monday. So we're just going to talk magazines. And I figure, you know, these kinds of things can only help just bring a little bit more awareness to why they're cool, why they're as cool or cooler than cards, why they're more rare, why they're more condition sensitive, what, you know, what's the difference between subscription and newsstand, those kinds of things. And I'll be interested to see how, because they just offered the Gretzky up. They just offered the fractional shares of Gretzky. So I don't know, Jim, have you seen how it's doing? I haven't really tracked it, but it just was offered a day or two ago, right?
It was so for those that don't know what we're talking about, the Collectible app is a fractional share collectibles marketplace, very similar to Rally Road. Collectible app bought the 9.4 Gretzky that sold on Heritage a few months ago for $30,000. They're offering fractional shares of it. I think they put the market cap at 37,000. It was an early access IPO last night. I don't believe it's open to the public, and I think they don't, and I could be wrong about this, because I played in that game a couple of years ago, and the fractional share game, and then I got out of it, so I'm not as familiar with it as I used to be. But it is in its early offering, I believe, as of the date of this recording.
Yeah, be interesting to see how that does. Hopefully it does well. Hopefully it fills up.
Yeah, so this isn't. I believe it was either Collectible or Rally Road offered a 9.8 1954 first issue with Eddie Matthews on the cover, and it sold out. And it had, I believe, a $10,000 market cap, and it sold out in less than an hour.
Oh, wow.
So, and I think, if I recall, I think it was $10,001 shares.
Wow, that's even better.
Yeah. So that sold out really quickly. So yeah, I think we're all eager to see how Collectible app does with the Gretzky offering that they've got. And I know I've got a friend of mine that works at Rally Road, and they are in the market for acquiring these. They see the value, they see the interest here, and they want to stick to more vintage issues, although that may change. And they've got a minimum price of $10,000, I think, for any of the collectibles that they have. But the both of those groups are on the lookout for these.
Hopefully they see the ones in Heritage.
I'm sure they do. I have no doubt that they're looking at them and looking at them closely. Yes. Other thoughts? Anybody? Other thoughts on the Heritage auction?
What does everyone think about? We're gonna have a record breaker here. I think the Mantle's, I don't know. I've got a gut feeling the Mantle's could smash the record.
Yeah, so I've kind of gone everywhere on that. I thought for sure when I first saw these get listed there, I thought, oh, this is it. We're going to break the Gretzky record. And I don't know why I'm softening on that now, but I think you're right. I think the Mantle and the Ali certainly have the best shot at it. I think the Kobe is really interesting because I know that there have been a lot of those sold via private sales that unfortunately have been privileged to some information around that. And they've been selling for around $9,000 or $10,000 privately. And so I'm really interested in that one. I love the Lemieux. I kind of have a soft spot in my heart. I lived in Detroit for 4 years and became a Red Wings fan when I was there, and kind of have a soft spot in my heart for hockey. So I'm really interested in the Lemieux. The Trout, obviously. The LeBron is really interesting to me because 2 years ago, those 9.8 LeBron first covers sold fairly regularly on eBay for about $3,000. But it's been a long time since one, although there was one about, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, somebody put a 9.8 LeBron on eBay. I think their buy it now price was $6,000. And within 30 minutes, they accepted a best offer at around $4,000. And I was like, oh my, I would have bought 10 of them for $4,000. So I think that LeBron easily clears 10 grand and could go a lot higher than that.
I do think that Lemieux is underrated cover, definitely.
I've got a close eye on that Lemieux because I think it's Dan Pop 5. Is that what it is?
Yeah, Pop 5. It's a tough one.
Right.
Yeah.
So that puts only the Trout, because the Trout's a Pop 4. As kind of the rarest out of there because there's more graded higher of the Mantle and the Ali. So after the Trout, the Lemieux is more scarce, which is kind of a surprise.
It's got to be more Trouts at CGC though, wouldn't you think? With the
here's the issue. So that's a great point, Rick. But here's the issue with the Trout, and this is a telltale sign that you can see there when you see very few 9.8s. But a ton of 9.6s and 9.4s, what that tells me is that's a really condition sensitive issue. And that's what you see with Trout. There's only 4 9.8s, and I think there's like 17 9.6s and like a dozen 9.4s. So that means that everybody's trying, they're hammering it, they're throwing it out there. And if you look at that Trout issue, tons of black ink and dark ink all along the spine. It's got a full color back. It's really condition sensitive. And I think that's why everybody's had a hard time popping those 9.8s on the Trout.
I love hearing Jim talk about 9.6s on his video.
Somebody sent me, somebody messaged me with an idea that said I should get a t-shirt with a 9.6 and a red circle around it and a line through it. So I may have to start doing that. See if I can find somebody that'll print that.
I'll preview it. I'm like, oh no, Jim popped a 9.6.
He's gonna jump off a building. Okay, last thoughts on Heritage before we move on.
What's the Mantle? What's it rated at? I mean,
that Mantle is a 9.0. There's one 9.6, there's one 9.4. I think there's 3 9.2s and 2 9.0s. I may be a little shaky. I know the 9.6 and the 9.4 pop is accurate. I may be a little shaky on the 9.2.
I think there's 2 9.6s.
You know what? I thought so too. I just looked. Okay, and you may be right on that.
I mean, I know the 2 guys that have the 9.6s. I mean, there's got to be.
You're right. So
2.
do I. That's funny.
Yeah.
You say,
So do
do
you.
I. So you're right. There's 2 9.6s. My bad.
And there's a few 9.4s. I think there are like 4 maybe. I own a 9.4.
So that makes sense.
So yeah.
So that's what you're looking at in the Mantle. Okay, let's move on to the next topic here. So this was suggested by a lot of people. And again, I'm going to kind of hold my comments to the end because I really want to hear what everybody else has to say. But let's kind of thoughts on the state of the hobby and secondarily, how to grow the hobby.
Well, Adam meeting with Jeff from Sports Card Investor is going to be huge. I mean, the guy has over 150,000 followers and he's just so instrumental in the card market. If he likes it, it's gonna be big.
I agree. And so for those that missed the last roundtable, Adam, who was part of the roundtable last time, and it's too bad Adam couldn't be here. He had a scheduling conflict and wanted to be here today. But Adam recorded a podcast and a video with Sports Card Investor, and it should be published and out either in September or October. And I'll be promoting the heck out of it on my social media and stuff as soon as that pops. But for those of you that don't know, like Rick said, Sports Card Investor has a massive following, predominantly sports cards, obviously. But he was very interested in learning more about the magazine hobby, and Adam, I'm sure, did a great job catching up to date on that.
It would be good if Adam could get some of those really key issues to show. Like that Nolan Ryan throwing is an awesome, and the ones that was it David? Was it name that just showed those? Those are really telling. I think they just stand out. If you could have him showing those, I think it's hard not to like them. It really is.
They were good. Other thoughts on the hobby and how to grow it, or the state of the hobby in general, and or how to grow it.
Jim, I think that's one of the best things we can do to grow the hobby is exactly what Adam was able to do with Jeff from Sports Card Investor. Is if we can get some, good spokespeople like you, like Adam or Dan with these amazing issues that you're putting up. If we can get some of those people out, sharing the story and sharing the hobby with big names that have big followings in other niches, such as sports cards. Sports cards is such an obvious transition to this hobby. That's why I think the sports card investor thing is huge, but any opportunity we have to get in with some of those, gosh, I wish Darren Ravel would, just like retweet something or, we need one of those big names, or we just need some of those people with the big followings to kind of catch a little bit of wind of what's going on and, see how cool it is like we've seen and share it with their audience. I think that's one of the best ways to grow it. So I agree with Rick. I'm really pumped to see when that sports card investor episode comes out.
Yeah, I'd love to see Gary V get hot and heavy with magazines. Darren Ravel is just, he has an opinion on magazines, and it's he doesn't think they're worth anything. And,
Hey, I will,
because he doesn't have any.
One quick thing about Darren.
Course.
And Darren's been very good, and he and I have direct messaged several times and gone back and forth on his posts and that sort of stuff, which for a guy with 3 million Twitter followers is generous with his time, even as limited as it's been. What he's told me is his big complaint is the slabs themselves. They scratch really easily. And we all know that, and the slabs are not great. I talked to CGC last year at the National, and they told me that they had slated that in fourth quarter of 2021, they were going to be upgrading them to match the comic book slabs. Unfortunately, they ran into supply chain issues and couldn't source enough materials to be able to pull that off. I just heard through an intermediary who talked to CGC just this week that they're now slated for third quarter of this year. So hopefully third quarter of this year, they will be upgrading the actual plastic on the slabs, which again, that's been Darren's biggest complaint. So I think that's a positive sign.
Well, Jim, another big thing with CGC is the turnaround times. It was really a big sticker with PSA in the card market, people waiting 15 months. But it's even worse with CGC because they take your money once they get it. At least with PSA, they didn't touch your money until they graded them. So you were in limbo for 15 months. But here I am with I've been submitting them since November and have seen nothing. And it's going to be hard to get new people involved to get their stuff slabbed if they're going to be shelling out big money and then waiting over a year to get them back.
Well, I wonder if there's a way to start like a consortium where a group of people maybe take some people's slabs, they front the money, so to speak, so that the person who's trying to get in is not out. He's got 20, he wants to have graded, he's not out, whether he does express or not. But kind of a group of investors kind of help that process. They kind of put all the, say maybe submit 100 graded at a time.
Yeah, and maybe that's a good option. Look, here's, and I don't have a direct connection with any of the higher ups at CGC. I do talk to some other people there, and I know some people that talk to the higher ups at CGC, and my sense is that this is probably about what it's going to be for the time being. And what we're seeing right now is for the modern tiers about 9 to 10 or 11 months. And I expect that that'll be that way for the foreseeable future. So I think that that now that we know that, we've just got to factor that into how we move and do things going forward. But I think the 9-month wait time is probably here to stay for the for the short and maybe even medium term.
Even the express.
No, that's a good point, Rick. So so interestingly enough, and I just looked at the CGC wait times today, the standard submission tier is down to 15 business days,
right?
Which that's been fluctuating between about 40 and 60 business days, and walkthrough is 5 business days. And that's been as high as 22 days in the last several months. So the more expensive tiers, the wait times have come down significantly from where they've been. The backup is still in the 2 bottom tiers, modern and economy.
But what's the prices now in those 2 tiers? Those 2.
Walkthrough is 3% of fair market value with $150 minimum. Standard is $85.
Do they have the same wait times, Jim, for the comic books, or is just the magazine such a small segment that they don't focus as much on it?
Yeah, comic books are different. So comics, the comic wait times are dramatically lower. Now they're still 6 months ish. About right?
They-
Yeah, about 6
They
months.
set up a lot on the comic end, or they had a couple months ago, I had 20 some issues go in under the modern fast track because they have the regular
Mhm.
track and pay the extra. And once they got them, they had those graded within like 2 days. It was like the fastest I'd ever had any comics come back. So it would be nice if, yeah. And it sounds like magazines have, like you're saying, with the 15-day and the 5-day have sped up a bit, at least on those top two.
They have, and keep in mind, that's the same if you've got a comic magazine, it gets submitted under magazines, not under comics. So it's not that they're just ignoring us sports magazine collectors because they're like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I don't want to turn this into a comic conversation, but like there are, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and there's some other publications out there that were produced in magazine size. If you get those graded, you have to submit them as a magazine, I believe.
I would just say
the
one
bulk
other
of their
key thing.
customers. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go
The
ahead.
bulk of their customers are comics, so that's what they're focusing on, you think?
Oh, absolutely. 99% of CGC's business is comic books. And if I was running CGC, I'd focus 99% of my time on my biggest customers, which is comic books, and 1% of my time on us magazine guys. And so it's understandable from a business perspective. I get it. We just got to know that the wait times is where they're at. Probably going to stay there.
Do you have any idea, like, there's a lot of like those gem rates that track how many cards are getting graded by the companies. Do you have any data that suggests how many magazines they grade like over a month?
I do. I haven't accessed it in a while. And I need to do that. So I'm glad you brought it up, Rick. It's been over a year since I've accessed it. But it is available. So I'll tell everybody. So there's a website called cgcdata.com. I think that's it. cgcdata.com. It's run by a third party who has direct access, a pipeline to CGC's API, and can feed the data in there. And so you can go in there and plug in and type Sports Illustrated and pick a time frame. So for example, if I want to see how many copies of Sports Illustrated were graded in 2021, I can select that on the screen and it'll spit out exactly how many were graded in 2021 and actually list them all there too and the grades they got. So it's an interesting website. I can tell you that the velocity of Sports Illustrated being graded has gone algorithmic the last couple of years. I mean, they were grading, it was going up, 2018 was good, and 2019 was better, and 2020, was a lot better, and 2021 was a lot better, and 2022 is kind of shot through the roof. So it's definitely becoming a bigger part of their business.
Good.
I was just going to say the main thing for me in the short term, in my opinion, what's going to really build awareness. I mean, people like, no offense to Darren or Gary or Jeff, a lot of times they follow the shiny object. And so we need data points. We need market sales data points to really bring attention to it. And that's not just at the high end. So, I mean, that was the thinking with a lot of these consignments to heritage is until nobody except a few of us really see the value in these. And so we need a few more to pop in the 20,000 plus range for people to step back and study them a little more and understand why they're valued the way they are. And so in addition to that, just seeing more sales on eBay that are maybe auction based, so we start to see just a little bit more activity there as opposed to, I mean, for years, for most of the last 5 years, it was hard to buy anything on eBay because everything was just fixed price. And it was one of two guys. It was two guys. This was before Jim. Like it was two guys. And you're just like, this stuff would just sit and nobody, it was like me and two other guys. That was it. That was the market. And it was frustrating at times because that a new entrant into the market, they don't know, like if a buy it now, they just assume a buy it now price is overpriced, right? Because that's the way it is with cards, right?
Yeah.
It's just, they're just museum pieces. And so I just think the more auction-based price points that can be generated, I think that helps develop the market as well. People just start to take notice when they see, healthy prices on on what they otherwise would have considered worthless. So that's my view anyway. I mean, it's not one or the other, but the CGC issues I think will eventually get sorted out either through competitive pressure or without saying too much more about that, but also just people are going to demand, like, PSA is eventually they've gotten their grading issues under control, and now if you've submitted anything to PSA recently, you get it back in 3 months, which was unheard of, during COVID. CGC, they're well funded, they'll eventually get this straightened out, but in the meantime, guys like Darren and Gary and Jeff, I just don't know how much they really promoted until they start to see some nice healthy price points that they can kind of sink their teeth into. I could be wrong, but that's kind of my take.
No, I don't think you're far off at all. I agree that we need some better price tracking across all prices. I think it's important too that we have a variety of price points. I mean, the $30,000 Gretzky and the $18,000 Brady that sell on Heritage get all the headlines, and that's great, but that's far out of reach for the vast majority of collectors. We need issues that sell for $100. We need issues that sell for $200 and $800, and
that's what I'm talking. That's exactly right.
And I started
stuff you've out there been doing. That. It's great.
I've started listing a lot of my lower end stuff as straight up auctions, and because I think it's good for the hobby. And if it's sells for a little bit less than if I had sat on it as a buy it now price, that's fine too. I just want to see some more velocity in the hobby, and I think it's good to just see that activity and have those affordable price points, because that's how the hobby is going to grow. It's going to grow. It's not going to grow. The publicity of big sales is great and wonderful, but the hobby is going to grow from the bottom up.
I agree.
You gotta
have you felt good about your prices, Jim? Like on like the Shack and the
they're okay.
Patrick Ewing. I mean, is it about what you expected or?
I mean, I've said this publicly before, part of my motivation in that is I'm just out of room. I just got way too many raw issues and way too many slabbed issues, and I need to make some room. And so, I'm completely happy that if I put, a low grade issue up there that's not a first cover that sells for $50 or $60, fine, wonderful. It's going to get into somebody's hands that's going to love it, as opposed to the, my office that's got, slabs from floor to ceiling. And so I've been totally comfortable with that. I've seen some others too. I mean, it's not a Sports Illustrated, but there was a very cool Hulk Hogan WWF program from the early 80s that sold for about $375 because it was a 9.6.
I saw that. I lost on that.
I bid on that. Cool. I didn't go as high as $400 on it. I was bidding on that a little bit lower, and missed out on it. But I think that's good, and I think you're exactly right. We need some more auctions. We need some more activity to kind of do that sort of stuff, and I'm happy to kind of help clear out my office a little bit with some of my lower grade stuff. But
because it's happened on raw issues. I just wish it would happen more on graded. Like there have been some raw issues that have absolutely blown me away. I mean, sold for thousands of dollars, like the Jordans and the Magic Johnsons.
And there's been a lot recently that have sold for $100, $200, $300, $400 that have been raw, that have been just some run of the mill Jordans or Tiger Woods, and I think that's good as well. It's good. It's good to have that activity. My only fear about growing this hobby is that it stays as genuine as it can, because as the hobby grows, that means we're going to get more shysters and scammers and bad players and bad operators in it, and that worries me, because right now it's been a very good group of genuine people, and I'd say there's a good number of us right now. I mean, shoot, I mean, I DM on a regular basis with probably 100 to 200 different collectors in this hobby. So, and then obviously there's plenty of others that don't message me on a regular basis as well. So it's certainly growing and certainly moving in the right direction. The fact that CGC hasn't been able to manage any more growth means that, obviously if we had exponential growth, it would, almost crater CGC's wait times. That concerns me as well, but state of the hobby is good. It's strong. And that's my thoughts on that. Okay, next up, tips and tricks for better grades. Somebody jump in on that with what their opinion is. And Craig, do me a favor. Why don't you start with us? Because you come from the world of comic books. Am I right on that?
Yeah.
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 And I've always said, comic books are 20 to 30 years ahead of us because they've been collectible a lot longer and they've been graded a lot longer. So give me your thoughts on tips and tricks for getting some better grades and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, number one, and you always say this, and everyone here knows it, but press your issues before you set them. Same with comics, right? I mean, it's pretty no brainer. But as far as tips and tricks, study, get a book on comic grading. I mean, comic grading crosses over to magazines, right? It's all the same, things you're looking for, right? So I would say, check out YouTube videos about comic grading. There's a few books. A good one's the Overstreet comic grading guide. It's pretty helpful. And just kind of start there, and I don't know, start trying to implement some of those strategies as you look at your magazines, right? Because like I said, it's pretty similar, as far as how to grade a magazine, how to grade a comic book.
Yeah. And that's a great point. Cause I've talked about this a lot. It's really a 50-50 mix of the comic book collecting hobby and the sports card hobby. But so many people are coming over from sports cards and they really struggle when they try and self-grade a magazine because it's just a totally different physical item. And it's so much more like a comic book.
Yeah. I mean, more complex, right? So many more things to look for. Like so many more issues, right? The card's pretty straightforward. You get corner, surface, but
does CGC, do their graders on the magazines, are they specifically magazine graders, or are they crossover from comic graders, is question one. Question two is, when you look at a 9.6 magazine and a 9.6 comic, is it consistently graded between the two publications, or is one tougher than the other? How does that work in your experience, Craig?
Well, so sorry, the first one, I'm not 100% sure. I always assume that the comic grader, like they grade both the comics and magazines. Like, I don't think it's two separate groups for that.
Do you know, Jim? Because you're always having to ask them to add like first cover. They don't know what the hell it is sometimes.
Yeah, I don't have any reliable firm information. All I have are whispers and rumors that I've heard out of CGC, and I've heard that there are, it is pretty much one group, although there's a handful of people that, while they grade both magazines and comics, they tend to be a little bit more expert on the magazine side. They, from everything I've heard and seen, they don't have certainly a Sports Illustrated expert. So it's a lot of crossover. And again, I'm not 100% certain about that. That's just a lot of rumors and whispers.
And sorry, your second question, again, was
just like, how consistent is CGC in their grading across different publications? So is a Sports Illustrated 9.6 equivalent to condition wise to a 9.6 comic book?
Yeah, I would say so. Again, like with the comic, 9.6 is just a minor production issue, like same as a magazine, right? So the smallest little imperfections that can throw it, down a bit. I'd say the one thing between comics and magazines that are a little different, at least with Sports Illustrated, is the page quality, right? With the comic, especially older ones, the newsprint, and the page quality is a little easier to gauge, I would say, than a magazine. Just because of the full color glossy paper, but I'd say they're pretty equivalent as far as on the 9.6 grade.
Yeah, I'd second that. It's more similar than dissimilar. I think that, Sports Illustrated traditionally had a lot more inserts that can jack up with your grade, whether they're the subscription card inserts or in the modern magazine. I mean, I've just gone through a bunch, and, during the 90s there, it was really big for them to put those really thick cologne ads in there where you like ripped it off and you can smell the cologne and that sort of stuff. Those can mess up your magazine. And I think those were a little bit more prominent in Sports Illustrated than they were in comics. And so there's some ways to manage that. And it's interesting. Comics, the production quality of comics was worse the older you get, and it gets better as more modern. Sports Illustrated is the exact opposite. the 50s production of Sports Illustrated is spectacular. I mean, the quality of paper and the thickness of the paper and the ink they used and all that sort of stuff is dramatically better than, and it got worse as time went along, and you know, and the paper got thinner and the ink got cheaper and the production quality got cheaper and that sort of stuff too. So I think that factors into it too. And if you're not familiar with that, it may throw you a little bit. But I mean, if you go back and you're leafing through a, you know, an issue from 54, 55, or 56, I mean, you can feel it when you touch it. It's just a much higher quality piece of paper, and it's a super high gloss and a high quality of ink.
That's a
I
good.
want to know.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Craig. Have any of you guys messed with staples before? What are your thoughts on like rusted staples? I've seen comic guys talking about removing and replacing staples, which I would never even think about trying. But have any of you had success cleaning rusty staples to try and improve your grade for CGC?
Yeah, so I'll talk about that. Yeah, I don't know if I've had success. You know, rusty staples are a major problem because, and here's the biggest problem in my opinion, is they will likely, once they start to rust, they will likely continue to rust and leach that rust into the paper as time goes on, even after they've been slabbed. And so rusty staples are a big problem. They are, I've never done staple removal. I don't recommend it. And by the way, if CGC detects staple removal, they'll give you a green qualified label, which you obviously don't want. It is very difficult to clean you're only, for the most part, my experience, what I've seen, you're only going to get the surface rust off of it. And once that rust leaches into the paper, especially on vintage magazines, it's almost impossible for it to come out. That's been my experience with rusty staples and trying to manage them and as best you can.
I was also curious has anyone seen, I don't know if anyone has seen like the Captain Mike's comic group. And it seems like in the past year and a half, some of the guys in there have discovered this somewhat breakthrough method of removing stains. Like they're using blue LED lights and making these blue LED boxes. And some of the before and after photos are absolutely incredible. I was just curious if anyone has seen that or tried that on any Sports Illustrateds.
Yeah, so I'll jump in again on that one. So yeah, I have seen those videos, and I have there's another really good comic guy out there called Immaculate Comics, who's a chemist and applies a lot of that to his cleaning of comics. And there's a couple of different things going on there. So stain removal is something I've done both for my pressing customers and myself, and I've had some success on it. It's not easy. You have to be very careful because you're talking about a solution-based cleaner. And for those of you that don't know, essentially, you take a high concentration of hydrogen peroxide, you apply it to the stain, and then you apply a UV light to it, and the stain bleaches out. Can bleach out. Depends on the stain. There's a ton of different types of stains. Works better on some stains than others. It's not an easy process. It's very risky because whenever you apply something wet to a magazine, you dramatically increase the chances of damaging it. But it can be something that learned, and I've learned it over the last year or so. And yes, I've had some really good success with it. On a couple of, I can think of about 5 or 6 times that I've used it where it was massively successful. In fact, one, I was able to turn what was probably a 9.2 with the stain into a 9.8.
Wow.
But you need, so if somebody wants to go down that rabbit hole, I would watch some comic book YouTube videos and that sort of stuff. Keep in mind, our magazines are constructed differently than comic books. The paper's different, the ink's different, a lot of things are different. So there's similarities, but it's not a simple one-to-one conversion. I do this for comics and therefore it'll be exactly the same when it comes to sports magazines. So I would, try some, test it out on subscription issues or junk issues first and do that a lot until you're comfortable, especially if you're dealing with a high grade issue. But yes, it does work. And you've got to use a specific, I don't want to get too wonky and geeky, and I'm probably already past that threshold, but you've got to use a specific range of UV light. Not all UV light works. But yeah, it works. Yeah.
Does CCS offer that as well as part of their pressing? Like they do some cleaning, I know, if they notice like a cleaning opportunity, but I don't know if they use hydrogen peroxide as opposed to distilled water or something like that, but.
They do not. So all the CGC does is a simple dry cleaning. And from what I've been told, it's really just kind of wiping down the magazine for any surface dirt. They do not do stain removal. And the other thing with stain removal, especially if you're using peroxide and a UV light, it is not a quick process. My process that I went through where I turned what was probably a 9.2 into a 9.8, it probably took 20 applications over spaced out about, an hour or two each. So it took me several days of continually applying it, just a little bit, very gently, very lightly putting the light on, very gently, very lightly putting the light on. It is a tedious process. Other tips and tricks. Okay.
I got a question.
Yeah.
A question for you. I'm probably the rookie of the group, but what about, have you guys bought something that's already slabbed? Like Craig was talking about, press, like the items I got turned them, to CGC before. I didn't even know what pressing was at the time. So have you bought an item, taken it apart, pressed it and sent it back in? Anybody?
Yeah, I have a number of times. Here's what I'll say about that. It's risky. And again, let's look to the comic book world for what to do and what not to do. There are horror stories on the comic book side where somebody cracks a 9.4, presses it, hoping they're going to pop a 9.6 or a 9.8, and it comes back a 9.0 or a 9.2. I mean, horror stories about that. I had somebody that I talked to who owns a 9.4 Mickey Mantle, first cover, asked me what and thinks it wasn't pressed, and asked what I would do. I said, no way in hell I would crack a 9.4 Mickey Mantle and press it and send it back into graded, because I think it's too risky that you would end up going to a 9.0 or a 9.2. And especially at that high level of, I mean, the difference between a 9.8 and a 9.6 is almost imperceptible. And that goes down the chain until you get to 9.0. So it is a very risky proposition. I've never done it with any of my high-end issues. I've only done it with kind of mid-level issues, but yeah, I bought it. I think my best was, I bought a slab that was a 6.5. I noticed that it hadn't been pressed. I cracked it, pressed it myself, sent it back in, and I was able to pop it to an 8.0. Not bad. Yeah, pretty good. But it is risky because you are not even close to guarantee. There's no guarantee that it will go up, and there are many examples where they go down. Okay, cool. Well, tips and tricks on my end. I mean, I think I've been through all my tips and tricks on plenty of videos before. Check the spine first. I guess the only thing I would, something that I think a lot of people overlook are fingerprints. And you'll see them show up in the grader's notes often. So, I don't use gloves. Some people do. I don't. I just wash my hands right before I touch any of my raw magazines. And if there are fingerprints on there, every time before I send my issues in, after I press them and they're all dialed in, the last thing I do is a quick little wipe down with a cotton swab or a cotton pad just to make sure any fingerprints are off of there, because I've got far too many slabs where fingerprints are in the grader's notes and I've been dinged on. So I think that's probably kind of one of those hidden ones that most people don't think about. All right, guys, this was awesome. Thanks to all of you for participating. Like I said, I'm probably going to do one of these, every 4 to 6 weeks. So we'll do them again real soon. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Check out Bradley's new social media that he's got and posted a ton of stuff. And you can find me everywhere at CGC Sports Illustrated. Thanks for watching, and we'll do it again soon.